Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to my speedrunning tutorial of Papo, the PC version. When last we left off, we finished off Act 1 with Forbearing Shadows, and now we're going to go into what is arguably the hardest act to learn, which is Act 2. The first 4 or 5 maps, pretty much everything in this actually is very technical. This is probably the most broken chapter in the game, and also the hardest to learn. So we're going to go straight into Chapter 2. The first map is called Cozy Digs. And it contains a pretty difficult jump to start off with. Basically what you're going to be doing here is the game expects you to sort of go all the way down here and meet up with monster at the bottom. But what you can do here is you have this little, it's kind of hard to see because of the lighting, but there's a tire that you have to stand on. You want to take a couple of steps backward first setting this up. In terms of where you land when you're starting off on this, you land like right about here. You want to take like 2 steps towards the back and left, and then from there you can run onto the tire and then jump onto here. This is the first part of it, and then after that there are 2 different versions of this jump. The one that I use, and the one that's probably more consistent for single segment runs, is this one here where you land on this area, and then from there you have a jump where you have to go down here and then jump onto here, and that will skip you having to use Monster's Belly. I'll just go ahead and restart it so that I can show you the full version of this. By the way, when you're going into the menu here, it's probably better if you're using keyboard and mouse to actually use the arrow keys. So you want to jump up here, down, and then hold up, down and left, and then when you're about a second away, you start moving in. The thing is, you do not want to get on top of the platform in the back there. So once you're here, you can. There's a little trick. Let's see if I can get it properly, where you can jump down. I didn't get it. It requires pretty much the momentum that you need anyway to get up there. So ideally, you can land over here. I've only gotten it a few times though. You want to leave this fruit alone because you're going to need it later, and just do what the game intends you to do and pull this switch, and it will reveal monster for you. Monster spawns sleeping. In order to wake him up, you have to get this coconut over to here. So what you want to do is you want to take a few steps. Once you're here, you just sort of spin the mouse around, and you do that. And then the next one requires a little bit of complicated timing. I'll go into it, try to explain it a little more. Basically, as soon as you hear the audio cue for the switch, 3 seconds after, 1, 2, 3, and then you throw the coconut. And that lets you move a bit forward, and it has you sort of boosting off of monster there. So anyway, as I mentioned before, you can have Q&As, whatever you want. I'm currently streaming this live, so if anyone has any questions about what to do, you're free to ask, and I will address those as I go along. The next trick is probably the hardest trick in the game. It's also not very consistent. It skips about 2 minutes when done correctly, so I will take my time to explain it. Basic idea is here, what the game intends you to do is it intends you to move around. You have to get all of these coconuts, spot all these coconuts, and then monster will eventually go to sleep. However, you take one coconut and you throw it. I'll show it here. You want to stand like right about here. As you're running, you throw it over to where this little part over here is. You want to make sure that it clips underneath over here. It wants to clip underneath here. When you do that, and monster is running, he has a chance of boosting you up onto the little ledge there on the roof. Now, this is also a very hard trick to practice because there's no checkpoint nearby. You're going to have to do that whole Cozy Digs part again if you want to do it. However, I will show off a couple of different ways to do it. So the way that I set it up here is, as soon as monster is finished eating the coconut here, you grab this, you move to the right, you go down to sort of line it up, throw it, it's clipped through here. Now unfortunately, because I took the time, monster has unfortunately started to walk. If he is walking, the trick will not work. He has to be running, because that's the only way that he will move fast enough to push it through. So when you run over here, you run through here, and I got it first try. That was extremely lucky. Your run will die if you don't get this on the first try. If you don't do it on the first try, you can sort of manipulate him by going over here. So now that this game has hit the checkpoint right here, If you try to do the puzzle as it is now, you won't get it, because Monster is not in the chair. So we're going to instead go into the main menu and hit the next checkpoint for Deception. And you'll notice that now that we've loaded the checkpoint, Monster is in the position that he normally would be when you're going here. But don't go back here. Don't backtrack here. If you do find yourself failing it, there is one way, an interesting way to get to the coconuts. You can use an extended jump over here to sort of knock the coconuts off the tree. But that only works if, as a backup strategy, if you've already failed that original trick. So the next setup for this area is also a bit complicated. Breaking the puzzle, you want to set 2 coconuts over to this side over here. And then you want to take a 3rd coconut and throw it like in that little ledge over there. Basically what happens is here, now that when I hit the switch, Monster is going to aggro as he's turning around and go after the coconut. That saves about 10 seconds. So let's go ahead and do that. You're going to hit the switch. I can't emphasize enough how lucky I was to get to get the deception skip there on the first try. It was ridiculous. Anyway, so as soon as he goes over there, he's gonna run ahead and grab one of the coconuts, and then while you sort of cut there, you want to grab one of the other coconuts while he's distracted. And this is going to be a little difficult to explain, so I'm going to have to take my time because it's also very heavily timed. I'm going to grab over here, and then as I get to the top here, I'm going to stop. You might want to pause buffer just to sort of learn this. You want to hold up and left as you're going over to this cutscene. That will stop the cutscene from triggering, and then you sort of go around over here. Now the next part is very critical. You want to make sure the monster stays on here. And then you raise the platform. You also want to grab a coconut while you're going into this cutscene. This cutscene normally triggers as soon as you grab the bucket there. And then once you're at about here, you throw it so that monster will run earlier. And then the thing I like to do for entertainment is just throw this through here, just for fun. Next area is also pretty broken. There's a checkpoint warp at the end of it, but also the other thing is that you'll notice there's a little bit of a platform down here. There are a couple of different ways to get this to set up. I tend not to do the fastest way, just because of the way that my computer lags. It isn't really set up, but theoretically the fastest way would be to jump down here, and then you can sort of go over to the area, but you need momentum, you need a couple other things. It doesn't really work out. The strategy that I use, which I tend to find a little better, is you jump early and sort of go back and sort of end up backtracking here, and then you use an E-jump to get over to here. Now that skips the first part of the puzzle. Now this switch you don't want to hit until after, once you're on the ladder here, as you're climbing up the ladder, you can still aim with Lula. So I'll try and show it off because I really only get one chance to do it. You're going to whip her over here, hit the switch, and then you go on top of here as you do it. If you're using keyboard and mouse, do not make sure that you do not hit any of the keys during the cutscene, because the game does a really bad job of sort of interpreting your movements there. So then you hit the switch, it saves the checkpoint for the next area, you can then checkpoint warp, that will take you all the way to the key. So yeah, as I mentioned before, there are a couple of people watching this currently. If they have any questions as to what the hell I am doing, by all means, go ahead. So, like I said, it skips the backtracking if you do this little checkpoint here, then you get straight to the key, and I have a split right here. You don't need to have it on my Landfair, but the next area is also relatively broken. Like I said, Chapter 2 is probably the most broken chapter in the game, and it's also the hardest to learn, generally speaking. Act 3 is a bit easier. Act 4 has a couple of different areas that are kind of hard, but I'm just double checking to see if I'm actually still streaming. Yes, I am. So there is a glitch I've encountered maybe 2 or 3 times where monster will actually not slide off of here, and he'll get stuck up there. If that happens, your run's pretty much dead. But just always, when you're first running this, make sure to double check, or you can also use an audio cue if you're really paying attention, to make sure that monster is done there. So anyway, next part of this is the game expects you to go up into here. You sort of there's frogs that are stuck in here. You got to kill them. However, you don't need to do that. First things first, you want to jump on this pipe, and then you want to jump over here. You want to line this up around here. You want to hold down and left, and then hover, and then go back, and then you can hover over to this area. That skips having to do that part of the puzzle. This trick's not done yet, though. There's still a couple of other things left to do in this area. A couple of specific things, otherwise you will waste a lot of time. Because we're basically breaking the puzzle at this point, Monster is not in the position that he is meant to be, so you have to do a couple of things in a pretty specific order in order to make sure that you actually get everything set up. So first things first, you want to hit this switch over here, which will drop the bridge that you normally go over to the second pipe. Pretty straightforward here. This is one of the few cutscenes you can move during the cutscene, so you can, while you hit the switch, you sort of hold down and right over here, and you can sort of blindly navigate your way. Try to grab one of the frogs during the opening cutscene, or while it's still getting the cutscene working, and then you kill the 3 frogs in here. Their positions are random. Generally speaking, you can get pretty good RNG off of it, depending. The next part is a little unorthodox, and it will, and it's the one way in which you really need to make sure that this puzzle works. You want to line yourself up on this platform here, and make sure that the coconut hits the edge there. If it's in that little, it has to be in that little corner, because Monster's hitbox for hitting switches is smaller than his actual character model, so you want to make sure it's all the way in that little corner over there. So then you go over here and hit this switch, which will deactivate the frogs, and will cause Monster to run all the way over to where the other switch is, and then you can sort of blindly navigate. If I had thrown that a little closer, it wouldn't have worked, because this game is pretty picky about when Monster can hit switches, and how long he needs to stand on the switch is another big one, which you'll see in the later puzzle. The rest of this is pretty straightforward. The really broken part of the puzzle is finished already. Generally speaking, this part is randomized. It's predetermined by what sort of RNG you have with the frogs. You definitely want to make sure you're like over here when you throw it, just to make sure you don't accidentally kill the frog, because you need to have one frog to lure him over there. This next cutscene, not this cutscene, but the cutscene immediately after this, you can move, and you want to sort of hold down and right, and just jump down here to make sure that you're on the ground while Monster goes over to there. Next area, if you've played this game before, you'll know that the game expects you to build a bridge of, I believe it's 15 blocks. However, there is a way to only do it with 7, and once you've practiced it a bit, it becomes second nature. However, it does rely on a bit of luck, which I will explain in just a little bit. So there is a very unfortunate scenario here. Well, Monster will always throw you, depending on where he throws you, depends on the sort of luck you have. First thing you want to do is go over here. That will activate this part of the switch, and then you grab all of the blocks. You grab all 5 blocks here. You only need 9 blocks. You want to grab these 5 specifically, in this order relatively, so that you're on the ground, and then when you stand like right about here, Monster has a very small chance of actually grabbing you, but it almost never happens. So here's the trick. You want to go over to here, collect these 4 blocks specifically. Do not go and grab this block over here. Even though it'll make the jumping faster, there's a very decent chance that Monster will actually grab you as you sort of maneuver down here. So from here, the game obviously doesn't expect you to make this jump. It wants you to do the whole bridge. So you got to be careful. Got to time your jumps very specifically when moving up here. You probably want to use Lula just to sort of pretend it. Make sure you spend a long time practicing this part. Generally speaking, when you're fast, monster will still be over by the cage, so that's where you want to throw the berry afterward. But because I took a long time, he's over here. Make sure you do not hit any of the switches but until monster has already hit the ground there. So yeah, that's probably one of the harder parts of Act 2 done with. Although we still have the house puzzle, which is pretty difficult, but not too bad compared to what we've already gone through. And I made it look easy, but it's really not. I can guarantee you that much. So, as I mentioned before, I am streaming this live, and I have a chat who is appears to be asleep, which is okay. But if they have any questions, by all means, go ahead and I will address any concerns that they have while I'm making this tutorial. So yeah, next thing we want to do, obviously run into the circle and do the slow motion section as intended. No way to really skip this part. This is a nice break for those of you who have trouble sort of lining it up. This is a nice little sort of interlude to sort of get your concentration back for the house puzzle, because you'll need it. House puzzle can really screw you over at times if you don't do a couple of specific things, which I will go over in detail, don't worry. Yeah, this game can get pretty weird at times. Thankfully, this is the only slow-mo section. There's only the second of 2 slow-mo sections in the game. So, yeah, this is a nice little break. You're not really spoiling it. Someone was asking in the chat whether watching the Spirit tutorial before watching it will spoil it. 'Cause not really, especially not Act 2, because pretty much all of the puzzles are broken, so you won't really see the intended solutions. So yeah, this cutscene is a good opportunity for you to get a drink or something. I have a split here, so I don't always do that, but yeah, this is a nice little break before getting to the house puzzle. Depending on how much time I have currently, I might do Act 3 as well. We'll see, though. I will definitely do speedrun tutorials the whole game. It's just I don't know whether I'll be able to do it during this session. So going out of this cutscene, you want to be holding right, which will help you a bit. Occasionally, if you're lucky, you'll get a very funny glitch with Kiko's skeleton, but it almost never happens. And trying to set it up is actually probably benefit. So you want to sort of hit D and then transition over to W as you whip the camera around. So this next area is the puzzle is broken. You don't want to start the setup until after Lula is on your back. The game intends you to do a whole series of sequences to get monster down, but you want to just jump on this barrel and then jump over to this piece here. If you fall down there, you won't be able to get back up. There's no ladder, or no, sorry, there is a ladder, but it'll still waste you a fair amount of time. So now we're in an area that the game really doesn't expect you to be until after you've grabbed quite a few of the houses. The main benefit to this is that you'll be able to start with 4 blocks of the house puzzle instead of 5. And you'll see the benefits for that later. So first you want to go over here, make sure you drop down onto this house, go over here. The order for the next 2 blocks doesn't matter that much, but I tend to go over this way because I think the cutscene here is a little shorter for this block rather than the other one, because this and the other block are what the game intends for you to be the first blocks that you collect here. If you do go through this cutscene, you want to make sure you jump so you don't accidentally grab the ladder, and then you go down here and grab this. So now that we started with 4 blocks, we're able to get over to certain areas that the game doesn't intend you to. This block is also one of the first that you're intended to get later in the game, and you're only intended to get it once you have monster with you. But that's actually going to be the very last block we collect. Once you go up here, you sort of jump, and then you tap left mouse button or X to make sure that you grab the lever as soon as this cutscene ends. First thing we're going to do is go over here. When you have keyboard and mouse, you kind of tend to get stuck over here. Just make sure you sort of like try to go around, or occasionally you can jump over it. So now I can go over here and grab these 3 or 4 blocks. I did not know that, Marbles. You learn new things about this game. Can you change the music files? As I was just wondering about the final boss music. So anyway, you go up here. There's a specific reason why you go here first, and that's because we left Monster sleeping over there, and you cannot complete this puzzle without Monster. So once you collect this bit of the puzzle, you want to jump down, hover, and then go over here. Normally you would use Monster's belly to get up here, but we don't need Monster. So now that Monster is down here, everything becomes timed. So you go over to the ladder, and then the next set of blocks is over here. Generally speaking, you want to make sure that the bridge is roughly this position so you can get over to that block first. I'm not really stopping because the rest of this area is timed. There are several different positions where Monster can end up, depending on where he is currently. Fastest way to do this is actually just to avoid this block for now, and go over and hit the switch. And then you can sort of, if you're really fast, you can race Monster over to where the coconut is. I missed it, but it requires you pretty fast. And even if you fail it, it's only 4 or 5 seconds slower as opposed to being much more slower. You throw over here, and then Monster will go to sleep because there are no other areas in this. There are no other coconuts in his aggro zone. Do not pick up the soccer ball here. I've done that a couple times. It wastes like 5 seconds. Only downside to this is when you're sort of phasing through the block here, the camera sort of blocks you from where you want to see. I mean, you could accidentally fall off, and there's no other way to get to this. You'd have to readjust the bridge. So the time part of this is over. You want to use an audio cue. That's how I do it. You want to make sure once the strings have sort of hit in, that means you know that the bridge is in the right position over here. The order in terms of not obstructing your view, you want to hit this one first, and then go over and hit this one, just to make sure that you can line this up. This is the very first block, one of the first blocks you're intended to get in the game, but we're going to get it last. You sort of hover over there, and you don't even need Monster to get that. This switch is going to remain empty. So that's the house puzzle. Pretty easy stuff once you get used to it. It's all about timing and improvisation as well if things go wrong. Once again, you want an audio cue. Once the strings start to kick in, that's when you know you can let go of the D key or the left analog stick, depending on whether or not you're using keyboard, mouse, or gamepad. There are relatively sort of little trade-offs between using gamepad versus keyboard and mouse. They end up being roughly the same. The disadvantages and advantages kind of cancel each other out. So even though this checkpoint cuts here, you don't necessarily want to use a checkpoint abuse here. You want to jump down and hit this little part on the ball and cup game, or key and hole game. Basically, there's no real trick to this. You just have to follow whichever key is there, make sure you're over there in time, so you don't waste any time. The keys go faster and faster the longer that you set this up. So yeah, this is pretty standard stuff. Another nice little break after, especially if you have trouble with the house puzzle. The only random part of this is determined by whether or not you generally would want the last key to be in the center. It saves about a quarter of a second in terms of getting over to the switch afterward. You just want to make sure that you can follow the key. Another benefit of using the mouse is that you can follow the key with the camera a little bit faster, but it's a personal preference in the end of the day. I mean, the advantages and disadvantages, as I mentioned before, pretty much cancel each other out. As far as I know, Wormtalon and I are the only two who actually run this game with keyboard and mouse. So then you move about a second over to here, jump up, and grab the key. Now, you can beat this part to the punch. However, do not jump. There is going to be a relatively good chance that you will phase through the floor here if you jump while moving up here. Instead, you want to run up here. Okay, apparently Marbles also runs with keyboard and mouse. So run up here. So now, White Mountain is going to require a bit of explanation. Also, it's timed, so I'm going to be pausing a lot. First things first, you want to jump off the edge. This ends up being faster by about a second or two. You also have the advantage of running. It'll be it's sort of RNG determined as to whether or not you'll be able to run during this cutscene. If you can't, you just hold W and you'll set this up. So the way that this works is that the three little bits of the building here will line up in such a way that you'll be able to get all three of them relatively quickly in this order. You start off with the first, you run over here, you want to jump down right about here so you can get the switch right away. This will also mean that you can eventually, you'll want to make sure that you don't want to move this as much as you can in order to get over to the key in the second part of the building. So the block is in a relatively good position there. You want to go up to the staircase, wait for this one to go over here. If you jump too quickly here, there's a glitch where you'll actually phase through the building, so you don't want to do that. Once you hit this, it should line up so that you'll just be able to get onto the right side of the building. Although it looks like I may have been a little too late. No, I'm perfectly fine here. I almost screwed that up. And then you sort of want to be able to judge where you place this. Right here, it's about a half a second faster to move it toward the left. No, it's not possible, because you have to move them anyway. This is the fastest way to get all three that I've been able to find. This area was pretty hard to route, but now that we have a decent route for it, it's relatively easy. Although there are a couple of different things that are sort of randomized that you can't really do. So once you put this in place, you want to jump off of here. That'll put you onto this platform. Now the way this is set up here, the little block is sort of halfway in between. Depending on where the block is positioned, you can either use the roof or the staircase in order to get there. And you also want to be moving this piece to the right, because if you go to the left, you connect with the frog pipe, and you don't want to do that because that's an extra cutscene that you want to avoid. So then jump up here. This block is always timed to make sure that you have to wait before you go into here. It's something about it's timed specifically with the other block, so you always have to wait here. Once you grab the key, depending on where your position is relative to everything else, you either jump down here onto the right, or because of where it's currently positioned, there are a couple of different ways that you can do this right now. The timing is no longer effective, but there are several different routes that you'll probably want to practice. The way that the setup, the game wants you to use the ladder in order to, or sorry, wants you to use the staircase. However, and it does this by putting invisible walls on the right side of the platform. However, you can set this up because you don't want to move this to the left unless you really have to. You can sort of set this up right about here. This is a riskier version of it, depending on where your position is relative to everything else. You might want to put it in a different position. It's just about trying to know intuitively what's going on, as well as practicing what you think is best for you. Once again, same sort of glitch allows you to pull this switch early. It also means that you won't be able to see what you're doing, so you have to keep an eye on the right corner and use the audio cue to line this up. There are also two different ways. You'll lose like 2 or 3 seconds if you fall down while trying to jump over here. Not a big deal. But it's generally something you want to avoid. It's also harder to do with keyboard and mouse. So then, as always, you move this over to the right, and that's White Mountain. It is a personal preference thing at the end of the day. So that's White Mountain. Once you set up White Mountain, you want to use Q rather than mouse down. to spawn Lula during the death scene. I just find it works a little better than that, and then you get the cutscene where Lula dies, and it's very sad. There's also a glitch here at the end of this cutscene where if you spam the Lula button, you can get Kiko to call for Lula during the cutscene here. We're also going to be going into Act 3, which is fairly interesting. So the glitch is coming up right now. You spam Q and mouse down, and you can get Kiko to call for Lula. Like that. So now we're into Act 3. Act 3 is a bit of start and stop issue. Start off at the beginning of the game. Same strategies apply as before. You hit the staircase only as much as you can. You jump around the cutscene trigger, etc., etc. The only really big change is that once you've hit the once you've raised the bridge, the game loves to stutter, even on the best machines. It will probably stutter. So you want to make sure you move to the left rather than taking that jump, the gap of the jump. Just because you probably won't make it and you'll lose a few seconds. Not much else to say about this area, aside from don't do what I just did. I mean, if you've already practiced Act 1, this should be very familiar, so don't worry about optimizing this part too much if you've already worked on Act 1. So here's the one change, is that you want to move up to here while it stutters, so that you do that, and you can sort of jump into the cutscene here. And then the next area is relatively straightforward. You just follow Alejandra here. And again, if I'm missing anything, like I mentioned, I'm streaming right now, so if there's anything very obvious that I've missed, by all means chat, tell me when I've done, because I want this to be as comprehensive as I can make it. Only other real trick that I can think of in this area is that you want to make sure that you're as close to the ladder as possible when Alejandra triggers the next cutscene. You want to be able to go over here and just sort of make sure you're in this area. I was a little to the right, so unfortunately, if you're in a better position than I am, right at this point you'd be spamming space in order to make sure that you don't accidentally grab the ladder. Move down here. Now this puzzle is a run killer, especially if you don't really understand what's going on with this game yet. This game killed a lot of my runs when I was starting earlier on. It still does on occasion. So I'm going to take my time to really explain what's going on. There, about halfway through, it starts to get timed. But this first area is here. You will save time if you manage to sort of go a little early and knock at least one, possibly two, and if you're really lucky, 3 of the coconuts bounce off of Kiko's head and sort of go over to there. On this one position, you want to make sure you throw 1 coconut. You only want to make sure you only throw 2 coconuts here. And then your other coconut, you want to specifically position, you want to make sure that you throw it right here, and then you close the portal and then immediately start running over to here. Depending, relative to your position, you might want to sort of take a little risk or not, depending. Make sure that monster is always going to be in this platform while you, and make sure you take this platform immediately before he starts running over to the other coconut. So now, before you activate the frogs in this area, you also want to make sure, this is very important, you need to get the strategy with 3 coconuts. Otherwise, Monster runs into an AI glitch where he will sort of bounce back and forth between the coconuts that are over by the tree and the one that you're carrying. Please, please, if you're running this game, make sure you memorize the 3 coconut strategy and practice the hell out of that, because you're going to need it. It's paradoxically the safest and the hardest possible strategy for that area. So, like before, you want to throw this coconut as you're hitting the switch. You want to throw it like right about there, so that you can grab it before Monster does. That's the key. So now that you get the frogs going, frog position here is random. I got very good frog luck there. Sometimes you can spend a good 5-6 seconds running around trying to get it. So once you get this part, you want to run immediately. Go over here, make sure you get as much of the portal open before the cutscene starts. And then once you go here, once you get this going, you run over here and then immediately run over to the coconut. You got to be really, really quick. And then Monster will follow you if it's the only coconut left of the platform. Once you hit the checkpoint here, you throw this. That should, if you throw it too far, Monster will not land on the switch for long enough. That's actually pretty key. Sometimes people run into a glitch where they say, "Oh, Monster hit the switch," but it didn't really count. That's because Monster needs to stand on the switch for a certain amount of time in order for it to activate. This next trick is very easy by comparison. Monster's AI will prioritize grabbing the blueberries over the frogs. So you take a blueberry, throw it over there, and then you can skip part of this puzzle by just running a frog right past him because he's too busy eating the blueberry. You should have more than enough opportunity to run over here and get the frog into the pipe before you start. This next area is pretty easy to do. And it's actually relatively straightforward, so I'm not going to actually be spending a lot of time on this, but I will be going over sort of memorizing what positions you need for the various parts of it. The other major trick is that once Alejandra kisses you, runs over, you want to make sure you kill at least one of the frogs on the way over to talking to her. That will save about 4 or 5 seconds, although only do it if a frog is in your way. Don't go out of the way to chase the frogs. Or if the frog manages to chase it, like there, I couldn't do it. I would have wasted more time by going around and chasing the frog than I would have by actually getting the frog with me. So yeah, that is it. If you're very, very quick, you can kill the frog during the cutscene, but I mean that's pretty much. You need to have insane reflexes. I can't do it. So, again, I'm not going to be spending too much time on this portion because it is relatively straightforward. Not too many tricks. The only trick, there are only 2 tricks I could think of right at the beginning. Actually, no, yes. Sorry, I will have to do the whole thing, but I'll remain quiet and just sort of answer general questions from the chat because there is a trick right at the end, which needs a bit of practice. So I will go off mic for a bit, just give me a second here, and I will just let this sort of show itself off. Okay, so welcome back. Huh. They have notes. Apparently they have those, they have notes in music stuff. Okay, Marble's one of the other writers of this game is looking for stuff in the music files while I do this tutorial. Anyway, this is the biggest trick in this area here. You want to count 15 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you stop here, go on the monster's belly, like so, line this up, and then jump, and you'll be able to get onto here without having to put monster into position. You move forward a couple steps, activate the checkpoint marker, and that will put you into the next chapter, A Builder of Bridges. A Builder of Bridges is probably one of the more contentious chapters in the game. When done properly, it's relatively easy. Nothing, particularly out of the ordinary. However, well, first of all, it has a lula glitch. Second of all, it has possibly the most controversial trick in the game. It's also one of the hardest, and I don't do it for my world record attempts, just because it is far too random. It is called Monster Boost. Those of you who already know the game in my chat are already probably just cringing at the thought of it. But, oh, okay, apparently there's also a visual cue. 3 of the legs are still next to the building and the rest are past it. Whichever works best for you. So, here, Monster Boost works like this. You go over here when you do not pick up the frog. Instead, you run past it, you run all the way over to here. This is an extremely random trick. Almost never works, but if it does, you save about 20-30 seconds. You stand like right about here. You also have to make sure that Monster is in a relatively good position to grab the frog, which he is not in this case. Monster is not cooperating, although he's in another decent position. The idea is that once Monster gets drunk, he's gonna try and throw you onto the top of here, and I almost got it. Wow. So once you hit it by 2 or 3 times, once you try it for 2 or 3 times, you don't get it. There are also 2 or 3 different random areas that you can really get it consistently. Also, I got the timing a little off because I spent a little time talking to it, and I realized that you have to run pretty much straight into the cutscene in order for it to work. I'll spend about 5 or so minutes trying to get it. It's really, at the end of the day, it's not worth it. You just, for cutscenes, for a world record attempt, you would just press the switches and grab the frogs and kill them, and just like you would normally. There's a bit of stuttering at the end, but this, I want to sort of show this off because this will be the end of my tutorial video for now. I'm going to do Acts 4 and 5 in another video. So like I mentioned before, you go over here. This frog tends to spawn best in terms of getting Monster angry as quickly as possible. And then you want to stand like right by the plant here. Hope that Monster actually grabs the frog. There should be a position where he will stand sort of to the top right over there, and then stop, and then move towards you. And then you have like about a 1/3 chance of him actually being able to do it. And there you go, I got it. So now, the complicated jump. You have to sort of do a wiggle jump. It's complicated. You have to sort of go back and forth a bit because the collision on this is not particularly good. So yeah, that's it. And then you get it. You can get it about 50-50 if you have that position that happened before where he stops and then runs towards you. And then you just run forward here. The skies will clear and you will be into Act 4. So I will show off Act 4 in another video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate this. I hope that more people will get interested in running this game because, to be fair, I think it's an excellent speedrunning game, and very few people are running it at the moment. I hold the current world record of 1 hour, 10 minutes, 56 seconds. I hope to be improving that soon. So, yeah, thank you all so much for watching. In my next video, I will show off Acts 4 and 5, which are also very difficult. So I will see you guys later.